good morning, everybody. We are live across our socials today, and what we're going to be looking at today is answering your questions from Saturday's webinar. So just to make you aware, we're live currently on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, and on Telegram as well. So if you are in our Telegram channel, we'd love to have some engagement with you in the chat if you're able to do that. If you're on any of the socials, we'd love to hear from you today. So Saturday, the 27th of June, we've just ran our flagship webinar. We do it every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. And you get the opportunity either on the webinar or at that point of registration to be able to ask questions. And then what I do is I collate all of those questions together. We look at whether there's any duplicates, and then we cover them. And that's what Ian and I are going to do today. We do this every Monday as early as we possibly can. And also, you will probably be aware, if you were on the Saturday webinar, that we also ran our polls and our lottery as well. So one of you guys or girls who was on the webinar on Saturday, if you booked in for an appointment with one of the consultants and you were ready and able to move forwards, whether you won the lottery or not, one of you is going to win. And I know who that person is. So we'll be announcing that at the end of the questions. So what we'll do is we'll run through the questions. Let's get your questions answered. Stick around with us for the big reveal at the end for who our lucky lottery winner is. And we'll post that for you at the end of today's chat. So Ian, great to have you with us again. Saturday's webinar, another great subject, plenty of engagement we had as well. I know Sims was talking about that on our meeting this morning. If you're ready, I'm quite happy to dive straight into the questions that we've got from the members. We've got a number of different categories to go through.
Well, yeah, let's get on with it. I think there was quite a few. I felt that there was a lot of questions coming in, so yeah, let's move into them.
Okay. Well, the first one is just to do with the mechanics and ex nihilo credit creation as well. And the first question we've got, Ian, is does UK mortgage securitization always void a mortgage? What are the levels of securitization? And what's the difference between banks and building societies concerning UK mortgage securitization? It's kind of 3 in 1 there.
Well, securitization of ex nihilo created credit, which is the signature created mortgage debt, which is the same whether it's in via a bank or a building society. They both use the same method. In fact, I wrote quite a detailed paper on yesterday about the different mortgages, different mortgage creation methods from different countries. The majority of the world has the same system that they use. There are some countries in the world that operate mortgages differently, and they do not securitize them, but those countries are in the minority. And it's typically where property ownership isn't very popular. You know, lots of, like in Germany, for example, there's more people renting a property there than there is with a mortgage. So where you find a lot of home ownership, in inverted commas, places like the UK, the USA, Australia, Canada, etc., that's where you tend to find a lot of securitization. And building societies and banks' methods of securitization are pretty much the same. So ex nihilo credit, you sign a contract. The birth certificate construct as a banking entity is issuing a negotiable instrument. That is that enables the bank to add it to their balance sheet as an asset, create a matching liability on the other side of their balance sheet, which is where the mortgage springs into existence. That mortgage security now is the commodity that is going to be traded. It's sold into mortgage securitization tranche. It might go through 2 or 3 layers before it gets, ultimately it gets into a mortgage securitization tranche. And then there will be a withholding tax agent, which is very interesting. And this is where they're all linked to New York, because in order for the investment banks who may not be in New York to operate and hypothecate these debt securities, these mortgage securities, there's got to be a tax payment made. So they have to partner with an investment bank in New York that operates as the withholding tax payer, which is the tax on human energy. So it doesn't matter whether the mortgage is in the UK or Australia, Canada, New Zealand, wherever the mortgage is created. If it's being securitized, there will be a New York investment bank that is paying taxes. They call it backup withholding taxes, original issue discount, to the United States Treasury. Because if they don't do that, then the securitization pools can't work. Because remember, the banks aren't lending their own money. There is no money. In order to use the securities and hypothecate them, there's got to be a tax payment where you have to pay those taxes in the US system, and that's where the investment banks come in. So it matters not whether it's a building society, a bank, doesn't matter which country it's in, unless it's in a country that doesn't securitize mortgages, which is the minority of countries out there, then it's all going to end up in the same framework, really. And I was looking at some research yesterday. There's $71 trillion of mortgages at Seed & Company.
Wow.
71 trillion. I mean, you can't even imagine what a billion looks like, let alone a trillion is 1,000 billion.
Yeah.
So 71,000 billion mortgage securities, or the value of mortgage securities held at Seed & Company.
Wow. Okay.
That's pretty big, yeah?
It's huge. Yeah. Like you said, more than you can comprehend. Okay, let's move on to the next question, Ian, which is, if a bank issued mortgages which were sold on after they collapsed, will this information be available to track to show the new mortgage holders?
Yeah, because the origination of the mortgage might be with Bank A. They might go bust or get bought out. Often they get bought out by bigger banks. But the mortgage security itself is transferred within 3 months of its origination, and it's going to end up in a securitization tranche or pool somewhere. And all we need to know is the name of the original bank that created the mortgage security, ex nihilo, whether they've been bought out, changed their name, or even gone bust. It doesn't matter, because the mortgage security doesn't go bust. It's sold on, and it's going to end up in one of these tranches, and our system will find it.
Okay, excellent. And the last question in this section, Ian, is, can this protocol be applied to auto loans, credit cards, or is it strictly for mortgages?
Well, signature credit tax redirection is any bank payment, mortgage, loan, credit card. But if people are looking at discharging a mortgage or a loan or a credit card, we're not geared up to discharge an auto loan, for example. We're only geared up to redirect the taxes on the loan, but not to discharge it, because that you have to have an administrative process in order to discharge a loan. At the moment, where our system is being built for mortgage discharge, current mortgage discharge, but not auto loans or credit cards or other kinds of consumer sort of unsecured loans, because the mortgages are really where the action is. It's all the big ticket numbers, the high value is in the mortgage area. So that's where we're focusing, and that's generally, it's people's biggest debt. It's their biggest cost, probably. It's probably number one on their list, unless they've got kids in private education or something. The mortgage is probably the biggest expense that they pay out every month, probably for most families. So that's why we're targeting discharging mortgages as well as redirecting the taxes, on the face value of the mortgage.
Okay, but I guess for somebody that does have a car loan or a bunch of credit cards and they are using their bank account on a regular basis, they can still redirect those taxes from all of those different things, from car loans, from credit cards, whatever it may be. You just can't discharge them. But what you can do is you can redirect the taxes, get those back into your asset fortress, use that as spendable cash, and you can manually discharge those debts yourself if you want to. And then because it's left your asset fortress, you've now you started the loop again. You started more securities, new securities that have been used to actually pay down or discharge these debts. You can recoup that the following year. So you can still do that. It's just that we can't discharge it for you and then recoup.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I mean, to discharge a mortgage is a administrative process. You've got to invoke a court. You've got to draft documents. You've got to serve them on the bank. You've got to serve them on the court. I mean, it's a lot of work to do if it's a small amount. If it's a car loan or an auto loan of $30,000, it's too small really for all that work. But mortgages are typically hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars, and therefore it's well worth the effort to do all the paperwork.
Of course. Okay. So moving on to section 2, Ian, which is to do with the 98 series foreign grantor trust, and then also jurisdictions as well. The first question is, why specifically use a 98 foreign grantor trust from the IRS Cincinnati International Unit to discharge a mortgage? Why not IRS Chicago branch, for example, or somewhere else?
Well, it's a very intuitive question, and it's the tipping point of the whole process, really, because all trusts and all LLCs or proprietorships of any nature, any kind of venture, is within the bankruptcy. So when you get an EIN number for a trust, for a company, for an LLC, whatever it might be, even for a lot of the ministries, all of those are within the bankruptcy of the United States, and they're all viewed as taxpayers.
Yep.
The foreign grantor trust that's issued from Cincinnati is outside of the bankruptcy, which is why what we're doing works, because it can become the holder in due course. It can become the creditor. It can fill up the negotiable instruments by filing 1099 OID. So you've got a debt on one side, 1099 OID on the other, that fills up the negotiable instrument and zeroes it out and discharges it. It's the only entity that I have been able to find that can operate as a creditor outside of the bankruptcy. Of course, creditors aren't in the bankruptcy because they're creditors.
No.
So this is the key that opens the system up. As I've been saying, you and I have been saying this for quite a few of our interviews. When I found that in 2024, to me it was like, wow, I've just found the key that unlocks the door to this whole system.
Yep. Yeah, that was a big one, I remember. Okay.
And very few people are going to have any idea why I'm excited by that. But I knew, because I know what the problems were of why 1099 OID and other types of tax filing, tax redirection haven't worked. It's because they're all debtor entities trying to do it. So I knew that Cincinnati Foreign Grantor Trust would enable two things. One would be enable the 1099 OID tax filing as a creditor, which is huge. And then the other is it would still enable the Foreign Grantor Trust to open the required banking infrastructure to receive within the US system. So you're out of the US bankruptcy from a tax filing point of view, but you're in the United States system from a banking point of view. Yeah. And that's what, I thought, wow, this is, I've got to tell people about this. And I remember telling Lisa, the day I discovered this, and she didn't understand what I was talking about really. So,
but yeah, they say you can't be in two places at the same time. Well, actually, with this structure, you can.
Well, a lot of people still believe that you can file 1099 OID from the SSN, from the Social Security construct, birth certificate construct, and they don't understand why that doesn't work.
No,
but I did. So,
Well, I wouldn't want to do that personally. So let's move
No,
on
in
to the
fact, I
next.
just met a guy, just earlier on who knew somebody who tried it and said, "Oh well, does your system work? Because I've met somebody who tried this, it didn't work." And I said, "I bet they filed from their birth certificate, social security number construct." And he said, "Yeah, I think they did." So that's never going to work.
No.
Actually got a $45,000 fine.
Wow. Okay. Hope you heard that, guys. So if you think that, these other organizations or other people that are talking about filing 1099 OID by using your SSN, think again. $45,000 fine. That's a big one. So furthering on from this theme then of the 98 series trusts then, Ian, the next question is, can a 98 series trust be used to clear debt in commercial banking entities globally?
Yeah, I mean, a commercial mortgage is a mortgage. Doesn't matter whether it was used for, what they call commercial purposes. It's all commercial, really, but it's the terminology. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Mortgages are securitized, whether you use them for residential home purchase or whether it's for an office or a factory or some other kind of commercial building. It's the same thing. Mortgages are created ex nihilo. The negotiable instruments are sold as debt securities into these securitizations. When you create a foreign grantor's trust, find where the mortgage security is, file 1099 OID. It fills up the instrument. It discharges the debt instrument by filling it up in accordance with the Bills of Exchange Act 1882, and that then entitles the foreign grantor trust to redirect the taxes from the taxpayer, which is the investment bank that's holding on to the security or is operating as a backup withholding agent for the securities tranche.
Okay. Right, next question is the 50 million limit a strict cap, or does it vary based on individual circumstances? I'm kind of guessing that this is somebody that is taking, the lifetime availability of the 2 million per year, and looking at that 50 million.
No, there's no cap on, if you, as long as the system carries on going, which I think it will, then it's 2 million per year going forward. So if it's 25 years, that's where your 50 million is coming from. Maybe it's 30 years that you're going to be doing it. Maybe it's 40 years. There's no cap on the value of it. It's a calculation that I put in the webinar based on the number of years somebody might be redirecting 2 million a year, which of course probably will go up as inflation erodes that value down. It will probably it'll end up to be more than 2 million per year going forward. But there's no actual cap on the total amount. It's a 2 million a year times however many years you do this for going forward.
Yeah, perfect. So final question on section 2 is, what happens if the IRS rejects the form 945 filing or claims there is a mismatch?
Well, the mismatch would only happen if there wasn't enough taxes already redirected to the 945 tax ledger or module.
Yep.
So you're not going to get a mismatch, because we're not going to file a 1041, which is the actual tax return, unless there is already enough taxes allocated to the 945 tax module. The IRS they can't lawfully stop cross-modular transfer because the foreign grantor trust operates as if it were the taxpayer and provides a command to the IRS, which is perfectly in line with the IRS legislation. So unless the IRS blocks it for some reason, and then that would go to, it would go into review, and that's definitely something I would argue, very vigorously argue it. then there shouldn't be, and it's just an administration exercise.
Yeah.
They're not actually physically moving a load of dollars from one account to another. They're just adjusting their ledgers to make sure that there is enough. Will have an impact on public records, because there will be then a public record of how much taxes were moved into the 945 tax module, but there isn't actually money being moved from one account to another.
No. Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people still haven't really wrapped their head around. There is no money.
It's just
there really is. Yeah. That's one of the first things you fundamentally need to wrap your head around and figure out, and then the rest starts to make an awful lot more sense. It's just ones and zeros on a screen, most of this.
It's difficult to get your head around it. It's like a video game. It's like all these things you're looking at are all artificial, and they just in banking, it's just columns. There's a whole column of debt, and then you balance it. Some of the digits off the column just get knocked off. But there's no actual money being sent around. It's just ledgering and big databases full of values. So.
Yeah, there's not some guy at the Treasury with a forklift truck.
Yeah, he's not driving that around.
Moving a pallet of dollars from one place to another. That's not how it works.
We'll go and we'll go and smelt some gold and pour it into a container until it gets enough, and then we'll ship that somewhere. But it doesn't happen like that. We put it into a bar. No, it doesn't happen like that.
No. Okay. Well, that's the end of section 2, Ian. So we've finished on that 945 question. Section 3 now is to do with the birth certificate, and then just legitimacy and status change as well. The main question here is, how do you respond to people who ask you about the legality or pushback against these protocols?
Well, there's nothing other than lawful process.
Yeah.
So you break them down. It's, can you send a declaration to head honchos of the state that you want to occupy the office of the General Executor as a living, natural living being, a living soul? There's no legislation that says you can't do that. That is perfectly lawful. There's no legislation that says you can't set up as a grantor a foreign grantor's trust. And there's no legislation that says that you can't employ a tax professional to file 1099 OID against the securities that are being held where you are the creator of them. There's no legislation that says you can't do that. There's no legislation that says that the IRS can't redirect taxes to the foreign grantor trust as a creditor. In fact, the legislation is all in my treatise. It's all in the other direction. There's nothing other than lawful process here.
Yeah.
So when people say, well, sounds like it might be unlawful to do this, that's because they simply don't understand it.
Yeah.
There's nothing unlawful about the Bills of Exchange Act and discharging a debt using a 1099 OID to fill it up as a creditor. Go and read it. It explains it. If you understand what it's actually talking about, it's actually telling you in there, and in the publication, the IRS publication 1212, it's telling you what you need to do if you want to play the game in the way that it was designed. It's just that people don't understand it, or they never look, and they just assume that it must be unlawful because they've never heard about it before. So if they haven't heard about it, if their accountant hasn't told them about it, if their banker, their financial expert hasn't told them about it, it's got to be unlawful. But they haven't really got any, they can't bring anything to the table that says that there tells me it's unlawful, because they've never looked. It's a presumption, nothing more.
And I would also say that because this sounds like potentially an advocate question here, how do I, kind of counteract those pushbacks. If you're wanting some guidance on that, then Sims and I are going to be doing an interview shortly as well during the course of this week, where we're going to give you not just some guidance on where to find everything in the platform, but also we're going to be giving you some guidance on the type of things that you can say. I think many of you maybe get a little bit hung up on having to know every single technical detail. And we recognize that there is a gap between Ian's knowledge and maybe your knowledge, and that's fine. But that gap can be narrowed. Go to Ecclesialaw, for example, .is. You can read all of Ian's technical reports there, and you can start to learn and understand, and you can start to, take measures and take steps to shorten and reduce that gap down in terms of knowledge. But when it comes to what should I or should I not say, there's some very, very simple tips and strategies that we're going to give you on that interview, where we're going to be just redirecting people to the webinars and let Ian do the explaining, so that you're not sitting there feeling overwhelmed that you've got to try and explain everything. So look out for that. That's going to be coming up. There's going to be some dialogue. We're going to do a little bit of role play on there, as if, I'm the advocate. Sims is going to be maybe a friend, a family member who's going to be asking some questions, and I'm going to be showing you some very, very simple narrative that you can use that is compliant, that answers the question satisfactorily, but then redirects those people to come to the next webinar where they can get all the information more accurately from Ian. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is as far as the status adjustments through Envoy. What is the exact process for changing your status?
Yeah, I think this is seems to be a repeatable question that we get. It's this whole status correction industry that's out there, where people think that you can file a document, or you've got this magic bit of paper that is going to be registered somewhere into a database somewhere. Once you've filed that magic bit of paper, then your whole existence in the Monopoly game completely changes. Like you've become a different player piece or something like that. Yeah. And it really doesn't work like that. The living soul already has creditor status, and there's nothing that anybody can do with any bit of paper that is going to modify that. It's the player piece that is being operated by the living soul, where the occupancy of the office of general executor comes in. So the living soul's status standing never changes, doesn't matter what process you're talking about. The living soul is always a creditor, never steps onto the Monopoly board, which is all bankrupt. So all you're doing is you're saying, look, I have been operating the player piece, which is the birth certificate construct, under the capacity of the occupant of the executor de son tour, because I've been representing the birth certificate construct as if it were me. And all I'm saying is I'm no longer going to do that. I'm just going to represent it as its agent. Yeah. And I'm going to occupy the office of the decedent estate as the general executor, as opposed to the executor de son tour. So I'm not changing who I am, because I'm the creditor. I've always been the creditor, and that's never going to change. All I'm doing is I'm just making it clear that I am now going to occupy the office of the general executor, as opposed to occupying the office of the executor de son tour. It's a subtle change, but that means the player piece can operate on the Monopoly board and do so without fraud. Whereas when the player piece is being operated as the occupying the office of executor de son tour, that means the player piece on the Monopoly board, the birth certificate construct, is operating and playing the game within an impersonation fraud, and that makes it basically it takes away its rights. So you're not filing this into a database somewhere where there's an office somewhere and they're waiting for your bit of paper to come in so that they can type into a system that you're now, should be viewed differently. And if you get pulled in by the police, they're going to go, oh my God, we can't touch you because you occupy the office of the general executor. So it's not that. It's basically that you have recognised that you are not the birth certificate construct, and that you want to use it appropriately as its agent without using it in fraud. And it's a declaration that you are making, but it's not going to actually be recorded somewhere in some state database.
No.
It's more about you. It's more about your understanding of that you are an agent for an artificial construct, and you're just making that very clear. And that also, that for your own purposes, you are understanding what that means.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliantly explained. There is a lot of confusion there. I think people seem to think that there's diplomatic immunity, that we get a lot of talk about joinder and how they want to separate themselves from the birth certificate construct, don't we? And really, you don't want to be doing that, because if there was a way to do that, which there isn't, but if there was, then you wouldn't be able to do this. You wouldn't be able to do signature tax redirection. You just wouldn't. You need that agency there. It's just a case of, as you said, Ian, tidying up the record, isn't it? Really, just making it known what your standing and position is moving forwards.
If you want to play Monopoly, you have to have a player piece.
Yeah.
So why anybody would want to get rid of their player piece? How are you going to play Monopoly if you don't have a player piece to play it through?
Exactly.
You see, if you get rid of and I've never seen anybody actually achieve this. They might think they have, but let's imagine that they could get rid of the player piece, the birth certificate construct. How are they going to set up a foreign grantors trust?
Yeah.
Because they need the player piece to become the grantor of that foreign grantors trust. So how are they going to do the Monopoly game changer if they don't have any player piece to create the foreign grantors trust with? They're just thrown away 50 million, 100 million going forward. Yeah. So why anybody would want to do that if they want to redirect taxes is that it's because they completely don't understand what's going on. That's the only reason they might want to do it.
Okay. So let's move on to our next category, which is to do with foreclosures, repossessions. So here's a question. If a house was repossessed due to non-payment of a mortgage or the interest, can we still go after the indentured trustee in court? Does the security still exist?
Well, you can't go after, well, in theory, you could go after the indentured trustee, but there is a big but, and that big but is that when a mortgage foreclosure goes through, the charge on the property is already discharged, because what they do is they sell the property on, and that discharges and removes the charge over the property. So you're not going to have, the property, you had a charge over it. The local bank, the bank that created the mortgage with the signature, they release the charge because they sell the property on, and the charge gets released. So that doesn't mean that the security, the mortgage security, goes away. It doesn't. The mortgage security is still held in the tranche, and the investment bank that is paying the backup withholding tax still pays the tax for the use of it, because they're still using that mortgage security to hypothecate and make profit from it. Could you sue the indentured trustee? Not really, because you see the only if you look at it from an indentured trustee's viewpoint, if the mortgage is being discharged, then they're just holding a debt security in their tranche, and their obligation is to the bondholders who've invested in that mortgage securitization tranche. They don't have any obligation to the mortgagor, because that mortgage is being discharged through foreclosure. So you don't actually have any cause of action against the indentured trustee. The only thing you can do is redirect the taxes
Yeah.
on that mortgage security, because that's you still created it, but the mortgage indentured trustee, they would just strike that claim out in a courtroom and say, well, this guy here, the mortgage is being discharged, we've got no relationship with him at all.
No.
We don't have any duty of care. We don't have any responsibilities towards this guy. So what's your court case about? Well, if your court case is about tax redirection, the court isn't going to help you do that, because that's done through the IRS. It's done through the Foreign Grantors Trust tax filing. So you're not going to be going to waste your time trying to put a lawsuit together on a mortgage that's already been discharged. Different question if the mortgage hasn't been discharged at the local level. If it's still going through a foreclosure process, and if it was very, very early on and it's months to go, then you could take the indentured trustee into court, and as I've published my documents, the adverse claim against the indentured trustee, you can discharge the mortgage within the Foreign Grantors Trust. You can file all your documents in the court, because the mortgage security itself, there is still a charge over the property, and that's what makes it different.
Okay. I'm going to add one in here, Ian. I'm going to play devil's advocate. What if there was a scenario where a person had gone through that, they'd gone through repossession, foreclosure, whatever, and the property had been sold, but the realization of funds for the property were less than the outstanding balance on the mortgage. So would there still be a charge against the property in that situation if there was still an outstanding balance that needed to be settled?
Well, there are some situations where the foreclosure goes through, the house gets sold for less than the mortgage.
Yeah.
And there's an outstanding amount which they try and make people bankrupt for the outstanding amount, or they try and go after the original borrower in their language, the original mortgagor, for a shortfall. And I've actually seen that happen, where properties are foreclosed on, they get sold for a fraction of their true value, and then the bank goes after the mortgagor, the original borrower, and says, you owe us this money because we sold the property for less than the mortgage. Now that's normally where the indemnity insurance comes in, because most mortgages have an indemnity insurance against that. So the banks would claim on the indemnity insurance, and the mortgagor would be left without liability. But there are situations where that insurance doesn't pay out. If the mortgage provider is coming after you for a shortfall, then you'd have a claim against the mortgage provider, because they never were a creditor in the first place, and all they had was an equitable charge over the property, and you would be able to countersue them if there was a court case where they're trying to get a debt from you, or trying to get you to pay for a shortfall between the mortgage and the house sale value. That would be an interesting case. I think you would then go to you'd probably go to the indentured trustee and the mortgage provider in the same way as on the mortgage, because that outstanding debt would be still linked to the original security. So that would be like a bit like a mortgage, where you go after the indentured trustee because they are no longer the creditor, and that collapses the mortgage at the local level, because they only ever held an equitable charge and it's been discharged, so they don't have any claim anymore, which is how the mortgage discharge protocol works. It's taking away the discharging the mortgage collapses the whole thing. It wipes it all out.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's move on. So this is more to do with timing as well, I think, here. So this is a scenario. I have a personal foreclosure trial, bearing in mind it's now Monday and this was on Saturday. I have a personal foreclosure trial next Thursday with my bank regarding my primary residence. How quickly can this 98 series firewall be established to block their automated system matching rules before the hearing?
Unless there's a miracle, it's unlikely to happen. So
Yeah.
if you already had a foreign grantor's trust, and if you had already filed 1099 OID, and you had a record of that filing being accepted by the automated IRS system, the electronic system, you might be able to go in the court and say the mortgage has been discharged. But the problem is that the judge is likely to say, well, we don't care about that because there's still a charge over the property.
Yeah.
You say the mortgage has been discharged. What evidence have you got? And you say, I've got this foreign grantor's trust 1099 OID as evidence. And the judge is going to say, well, that's not happening here. That doesn't happen in locally. That happens at the US Department of Treasury, and that's a different jurisdiction. And we're not interested in what's happening in America. And all these kind of things will be put up as a barrier. And that's how they protected themselves. They've got like a fortress and they've got a moat around it. And you're in the middle of the fortress trying to say, outside the fortress, over there, on the other side of the wall, on the other side of the moat, on the other side of the forest, the mortgage is being discharged. And the judge is going, well, in this castle here, in this fortress, there's still a charge over the property. So we don't care about what's going on over there. We only care about what's going on here, which is why you've got to take the case on at the source, in New York, to be able for it to have any bearing on something locally. People have tried arguing about mortgages being discharged at the top of the ledger, but you've got no court case. You've got no way of bringing it into the local court. You can only do that if there's a court case in New York, and then you can bring that court case. You can reverse it in as a higher court to the local court, because the First Circuit Court of New York is in the legal system is a higher court than what's probably a county court where the mortgage foreclosures event is going on, and they will listen to the New York court because it's higher up in the hierarchy of courts. It's a superior court to the county court.
Yeah, but that takes time, and it doesn't sound like this person has a lot of time. 72 hours is not enough time.
Well, the only thing you can do, and this is what I suggested, I think last week, is if you get yourself a AI system and you put in all the court papers and you ask the AI, is there anything in this process that I can attack? The art of legal warfare. Has the process been, has it been followed meticulously by the lawyers and the bank that's taking the foreclosure on or taking it into the court? If they've missed a step, not served the documents in the right way, then you might be able to buy several months. You might be able to get a stay. You might be able to get the process delayed for several months. But it isn't easy. You've really got to have, I'd like to say, very minimum 3 months before any hearing, if you're going to do the mortgage discharge process. But even that's tight. 6 months is better, really.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the last category then, which is to do with timelines and historical reach and jurisdictions as well. So questions here are, what is the time period for the void process, and how will we know exactly when it happens on the public ledger?
So are we talking about mortgage discharge here? I guess we are, yeah?
Yes, I believe this is to do with mortgage discharge, yeah.
So as soon as a foreign grantor trust files 1099 OID, it's instantly accepted by the electronic filing software.
Yeah.
It happens within moments. that at that point there, the Foreign Grantors Trust has discharged the mortgage in accordance with RS publication 1212. So you've got the electronic filing evidence, because you've got a screenshot of the filing screen that shows that the 1099 OID has been accepted.
Yep.
Once it's been accepted in accordance with the IRS publication 1212, the mortgage has been discharged. Now, you get that together with an affidavit from the electronic reporting officer, that's the license holder who filed 1099 OID using the IRS's software. That is powerful evidence of mortgage discharge, but it's got to go along with the case being you've got to file an adverse claim against the indentured trustee, saying that the Foreign Grantors Trust has an interest in this security. So you've got to do that first, then you file get the Foreign Grantors Trust and the 1099 OID filing served in an electronically process, I should say. Then you challenge the indentured trustee and the mortgage provider in New York. They're both defendants on the grounds that you want the charge removed.
Yep.
And that's a New York lawsuit that you're going to be filing as the creator of the credit. So you're not filing as the trust. You're not filing a court case as the trust. You're filing the court case as the creator of the credit and the beneficiary of the Foreign Grantor Trust. And that's called pro se. And then you file documents in the court, and then the indentured trustee and the local bank that created the mortgage in the first place, they get named as defendants. And then you can also put in an insurance claim against the indentured trustee's insurance. And then what you're really trying to do is to leverage the indentured trustee to privately settle, because they really, really don't want the court case to go public. No, because it's a public case. They don't want you to be talking about their backup withholding taxes on the 945 ledger, and the fact that you were able to discharge the mortgage with the Foreign Grantors Trust filing 1099 OID. They don't want that to get spread all around the internet, which obviously is a risk. So they would rather, in my view, that it's much better for them to privately settle and remove the mortgage charge privately and move on without any public court case where they might have lost it, or public record of their 945 ledger, which would be very visible to a lot of people if it's in a New York, if it's all being filed openly in New York. Yeah, it's called the PACER system, and law firms, in other investment banks, anybody who's interested in mortgages will get to know about that pretty quick.
Okay. So final question. Does this work for European residents, or is it strictly limited to the UK and US legal frameworks?
Well, creating a Foreign Grantors Trust outside of the bankruptcy works for anybody from anywhere. It's a Foreign Grantors Trust, meaning it's outside of the United States system. It's outside of the bankruptcy of the United States. So it works anywhere. The securities that have been put into the system, into the bankruptcy, there are certain countries in the world that don't have any link at all to the US system. So it depends on where you are. But I haven't yet come across anybody who would be excluded from this because of where they come from. The Foreign Grantors Trust, anybody from anywhere can create that. You don't have to have any link to the United States to get a Foreign Grantors Trust. So then it's just about what banks have you been working with.
Yeah.
And if the banks you've worked with have sold the debt securities to to an investment bank, which is almost certainly has happened, then yeah, the system will work for you.
Okay. Well, that brings us to an end of the questions, Ian, for Saturday's webinar. So we've got a couple of other things to go through with you today. If you enjoyed Saturday's webinar and you've had your questions answered, then we would encourage you to take action, because all of this is great information, but it just remains information if you do nothing with it. So if you're looking to discharge your mortgage, if you're looking to also then redirect the taxes on that back to a foreign grantor trust as an asset fortress so that you can use that again and just keep going through that same infinite loop of recoup and spend, recoup and spend, then you need to take action. If you're already doing that, great. We welcome you into the fold here at the Republic of Old Souls, and we're looking forward to you seeing those results. But if you are still a little bit unsure, then you've got another opportunity this coming Saturday to get some more information straight from the horse's mouth. Ian is going to be doing another flagship webinar on Saturday. I'm also going to be hosting that with Ian. This Saturday, we're going to be talking about how your ability to do this over the next 25, 30, 40, however many years could be worth between 50 to $100 million. And we're going to show you how this secret is revealed on how your foreign grantor trust filing 1099 OID redirects those taxes, and that can be done year in, year out, moving forwards. So if you want to join us on Saturday's webinar, then you need to go here, roswebinars.is, register for the webinar. If you've got questions surrounding the content, you can put your question in at registration phase. If you have a question live on the webinar while Ian's delivering the information and you're not quite understanding what he's talking about and you've got a question surrounding that, you can post that in the Q&A tab and I will collect that and we will answer it for you this time next week. So go to RS Webinars if you want to register. If you want some more information about how this all works and you're more a person who likes to read and likes to dig into the details, then you can certainly go here to ecclesialaw.is and you will find all of Ian's technical reports on that website. There's 60 to 70 reports, including how to redirect taxes. We go through the entire process front to back, from the very foundational historical side of this right through the process and into the banking rails at the end, and how a specific structure for banking needs to be formed as well. There's a lot of detail there. I think one of Ian's reports there is roughly 17 to 20 pages in length. So if you like technical, definitely go to Ecclesia Law, okay? And if you like watching us talk about this stuff and you find that this is the best kind of medium for you to really digest the information, then you can go to our platform. You can go to Ross Media Platform .is and you'll see more interviews that Ian and I have done on these very subjects. So before we give the mic over to you again, Ian, for final thoughts, maybe what we should do is reveal our winner from Saturday. So on Saturday, we gave you the opportunity to move forwards. We ran the polls as we do each week. We gave you the opportunity to move forwards with the Monopoly Game Changer protocol, which covers all aspects of this. That is our flagship protocol. Within that, you get signature tax redirection back to the age of 18. You get your 98 series grantor trust to be able to do that. You get envoy status as well. We've spoken about that today. We had questions about status and how to change that correctly and what that means. And also you will get what's called the Asset Fortress Protocol, which is your private treasury to be able to spend and recoup year in, year out, but also be able to shelter assets moving forwards. If you're smart with this quote unquote money, as we call it, wouldn't it be great to be able to buy things, physical things that have real value to them, maybe some gold, and put that into your asset fortress and shelter that moving forwards and create generational wealth for you and your family. So that's what the Monopoly Game Changer does. It is an amazing protocol and package in itself. And one of you lucky people is going to get to go through that with no donation required. This is on us as a ministry. This is us wanting to help. This is us wanting to give back. So in order for people to qualify for that on Saturday, number one, you had to book in. You had until 10 p.m. to book your call with one of the consultants. The next criteria is you can't book a call and then not show just because you want to enter the lottery. That doesn't sit well with us, doesn't sit well with anybody else here. So you've got to show up for the call, and you've got to be in a position where you can move forwards, regardless of whether you win or not. So you've got to have the financial means to be able to move forwards. It's got to be a genuine booking, have to show for it, had to be booked before 10 p.m. On the Saturday night. And the person that we have picked from the draw is a lucky gentleman called John Graves. So John, if you're on here, I don't know whether you are, if you're on socials watching us, John Graves, you get to go through our Monopoly Game Changer with 0 donation. That is on us here at the Republic of Old Souls, and we're very grateful to have you with us. So that's our lottery winner, Ian. Any final thoughts from yourself before we dive into our next episode?
And all I'll say is that for people who are, wanting to spread the word and not sure how to explain it, how to introduce it, I completely understand it. But we will have the Ian Clifford avatar very soon, and I would suggest all you do is you say, look, I'm not the expert, I don't really get it all, but you can come to one of Ian's webinars, or you can ask this avatar questions, and then come to the webinar, and then get involved in interviews on ROS Media. So if I was looking to promote this, I wouldn't try to explain it all in a 5-minute conversation. I had a meeting earlier today, and I went in there. There was 4 guys in a meeting room. They didn't have any idea about what we're doing. It was to do with the banking opportunity, and I was able to explain it in 3 minutes by just framing it as tax redirection. If you try and approach it, it's like some kind of recoupment of taxes, or it's something to do with getting your money back from the banks, or you go down all these pathways. People's eyes glaze over. They think, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. But I found that if I just explain it as a tax redirection, nobody says, well, what does that mean? They just seem to accept that is something which you sound like you can do. And then you can explain it a bit further by sending them the avatar or getting them to come to a webinar. If you just said, look, there's tax redirections, you might qualify for up to $2 million a year, but I'm not going to explain it all. If you want to know about it, here's the avatar, come to one of Ian's webinars. I wouldn't go any further than that.
No. And that's exactly how I'm going to be framing it with Sims when we do our role play, to be fair, because the one thing you don't want to do is butcher the response and get it all wrong. So the best thing to do is give them a very short, simple answer, something they can relate to. We can all relate to taxes because we all pay them at the moment, don't we, in the vast majority of cases. And people love to think that if there's tax owed back to them, then everybody's very excited about that when they realize that there's tax owed back. And that is exactly what this is. It belongs to you. It's already been paid. You're simply redirecting it through some administrative filing. That's all it is. Okay, so moving forwards, guys, we've obviously got a webinar coming up this Saturday, 10 a.m. on July the 4th. So Independence Day. We have got a webinar coming up, which is, again, all to do with tax redirection via 1099 OID through a 98 series grantor trust. But I think the big one here for people is to realize that if you've got a number of years left of playing the game of Monopoly, this could be worth anywhere from $50 to $100 million to you. That's life-changing for anyone. At $2 million a year, what an amazing, comfortable life you could live and be able to do that. So join us on Saturday, 10 a.m. live. In a second, if you are joining us on the socials right now, if you want to have a sneak peek into what we are going to be talking about or what Ian's going to be uncovering on Saturday, then in a couple of minutes, when we've finished our Q&A here, we are going to be back here on StreamYard, on Telegram, on X, on YouTube, on Facebook, and we're going to do our weekly webinar preview for about 15-20 minutes. If you want to stick around, we'd love to see you on that, and we'll be jumping back on in a couple of 3 minutes time to go through this Saturday's webinar. We're not going to give too much away because we obviously want you to join us on the day, but it should be enough to whet your appetite, so much so that you could maybe refer somebody else to come and have a listen as well. All right, so we'll see you in a couple of minutes. Join us back on the socials. Bye for now.